Sheila here with Sirius Telus Moon, and this is Mars, our Jupiter day. The midheaven is ruled by Saturn, and the ascendant is ruled by Mars. We are approaching the full moon at 5 degrees Gemini, and I don't know why I got the calling to look at the Great Depression natal chart. So I know the Great Depression was about the ingress of Aries into Aries. Um, And I definitely predict that towards the 50s, we'll have similar events. If we can take a look at Neptune at 2012 versus Neptune at the end of Pisces, okay? A lot of renewed attention around religions, um, holistic aspect of medicine, channeling, with all the reality checks, okay? Manifestation. For example, Pluto ingress to Capricorn was the subprime crisis that on the low, and the Epstein arena that on the low, not on the low, um, happened again with Pluto at the end of Capricorn. Um, Uranus ingress to Taurus, think everything to 2018, and certain things are kind of culminating um, upon the Uranus at the end of Taurus. So that's one thing. But then I was like, okay, let me take a look. Why today, applying to the full moon of Gemini, am I getting the call to look at the Great Depression chart? Because it's not Aries, but I did get the notion that people might get addicted to trade. And I'm like, oh, what was the Neptune in the Great Depression? Well, it was in the beginning of Virgo. Neptune is addiction, Mercury is trade. However, before taking a look at the chart, um, definitely Saturn and Neptune are going to affect. When Saturn and Neptune first met in Aries, it pretty much was the tariffs and the recovery from cancer of King Charles. So, and also the moves. Personally, I ran into a person that was, he couldn't say it, but was affiliated with a trafficking ring that money launders in initiation to make trading platform sold to banks. And he told me about the fact that they work in trees because if one loses the grip, then the other two are supposed to not be hurt. Supposed to. Because I don't feel like that's what the Saturn Neptune is about. And the second was of how the big money moves and shifts the trade, and that his program can predict that. Of course, it was not Epstein affiliated or something of that sort. He would not have been able to predict these moves. Okay, one has to be tapping into those that mind control, those that move the markets, and just the hidden of hidden of hidden of hidden. So either that person was extremely smug, or he was one of the people. Okay, so like with Neptune, you never know. Yeah, I just met him at a coffee. Um, it was yes, it was kind of like heightenedly smug, but then it was Neptune ingress, and everybody was excited, and I was just recording live, so people could get smug on that as well. That's Neptune. It's like the person could have a drug-like effect. So definitely Saturn, Neptune, but also Uranus, Sedna. Euro Better per se definitely talks about the currency. I have been talking on and on and on about Euro Better per se. I made a talisman of Euro Better per se, actually more than one. Talisman of Uranus in Taurus. Combine that also with Deneb Algedy to have like a more kind of fair and square approach, or to hold attention. It's a lot of attention to hold. Okay, I wouldn't prescribe that to beginners who try to make talismans. Um, and this is also Uranus Sedna that we're going to have with Uranus ingress for good to Gemini. So Uranus Sedna conjunction is the volatility of the market because of the volatility of the reliance on extortion codes. Okay, um, and the many omens that I got that the bigger war is about sexual sovereignty. So colonialism, Neptune, Mars. It's going to be looking holistically at what everybody does with Mars. So genitalia mutilation, particularly with Saturn, is going to be a big issue of that, and a point of war. Okay. Also, when you think about, there's a lady, the knitting cult lady, and she was in the U.S. intelligence in the army, and she writes about cults and the cultification of U.S. So of course I have a lot of, my own arguments from my own perspective on the things that people don't talk about. Not anymore. Not anymore. Okay, I have not. The amount of racist jokes is just, I talk about colonialism. There's nothing more racist jokes than colonialism. And and it always arrives when I'm recording or something. I think I didn't upload an episode because of that. Now here's the thing about, what we talk about racist jokes. Most of the people that tell them are not the least as racist as they sound, which I'm trying to vouch for you. And so I was always pissed off of that, and then I went to Madeliwen, and it's racist jokes all over the place. It's kind of like no, the satire we made. Somebody came from, I think it was Greece, and everybody did a Monty Python on the kings on the these guards that do the silly walk. I mean, it's the original silly walk, and then he was from Greece, so it was like really really offended. Was authentically offended. Um, but if we talk about let's talk about the Great the Great Depression for a change. Then Uranus Sedna I do predict to be volatility in market to do with the fact that trafficking calls are unreliable, and the very rituals that are done are undermining everyone that are doing those rituals. So my prediction to the for good Uranus Sedna, and we already see it with the intelligence crisis. I talk about the knitting cult lady. Um, yes, you talk about disobedience of illegal order, and I'm like, well, MK Ultra, MK often, sexual sovereignty. And she gave the example of, an illegal order she disobeyed to her commander, and her commander wanted to check information for invading Canada. Um, okay. I'm gonna talk about either of the daddies. And yeah, so, but he. That was the part when Trump said, "Yeah, Canada thinks we're gonna protect them." But here's the thing: sexual sovereignty. We talk colonialism, okay? Um, Sexual sovereignty, okay? If you're thinking about the legal orders to disobey, so complying with violation of sexual sovereignty is way worse than um, then, and we all know what happened to the people that didn't comply. Okay, folks that watch my channel since, I think the last picture I have in Spirit of Matter looks like with me. It's a hat. It's not a religious hat, but they try to make me look like I'm religious and then traffic me or something like something dumb fuckery like that. So everybody knows what happened to people who disobey illegal orders regarding sexual sovereignty violation, and in academia and probably in the army, right? So. Um, so disobeying, like, I'm sorry, complying with sexual sovereignty violation is way worse than looking for information on how to conquer, let's say, Canada. And why is that? It's going to be very relevant for trade as well, um, because Neptune Aries is the global trade wars. It's, people forget about the megalithic liquidation of, thank you, of stealth wealth. I'm sorry, Gesundheit. It's about to be full moon in Mercury sign, okay? So people forget about the megalithic stealth wealth of Neptune. And this is where people don't even use the same currency and so on and so forth, or hidden currencies. But this is also kind of reminding us that the susceptibility to invasion is around violation of sexual sovereignty. Like, Israel is going to have a really challenging time because it's the seventh house of Israel, but also those who think to invade to Israel and keep the land are going to have extremely challenging time because they're going to have to be competent at honoring sexual sovereignty the best. It's always been that way. It's just that people en masse were not too aware of that because we were still so far from sexual sovereignty that people didn't even see the trajectories. They saw women rights, they saw children rights, they saw black slaves of white after white were slaves of black. Um, they saw the apologies for colonialism, by sometimes people that were mixed blood with the colonized. Um, and and then, the bigger the war, the bigger the issue. Even Genghis Khan, the Genghis Khan wars were around Genghis Khan growing into an environment where he had to kill his brother, so his brother from another mother wouldn't rape his mother, because it was allowed to where he grew up. So when a person goes into that and already kills his brother to save his mother from being raped, he will kill the entire world if needed be. But then the problem is that those things, the things that went on in the Genghis Khan wars were the inspiration to the MK Often. Not just the MK Ultra, the MK Often. Okay? So, when we talk about conquering land, it's not for nothing that the colonialist enterprise was also the abolition of um, burning the widows with the dead in certain countries. Okay, there are a lot of things where people just ran into customs that they couldn't even envision how cruel they are. Now you have to understand that within culture, let's say the people that were the decision makers, okay, or the people that were running Vogue, for example, Dutch East India, okay, um, when they went through the ritual abuses, a lot of them could have been dissociated. So when they would see, let's say, a costume in another land that is reminding, that could be a trigger, and then they would want to kill that costume with its people, and it would be an onset of the trigger that when they were abused, but they would not necessarily remember that. Sometimes they would, sometimes they wouldn't. And then they brought their own costumes, which were equally malefic, and ran into opposition from the locals. So this is where the indigenous to the land meets those that are new to the land. And I did my astrocartography with Rahu, okay? And I have Rahu in the fourth house with Chiron, and it did show up, the astrocartography line did show up also in places where, not also, mainly in places where I haven't been before, northern to the places of my supposed known origin. Bloodline wise, probably not, but that would be so diluted that one can count that as, yes, I'm sorry, new old land. Okay? And it's not because I have a colonialist enterprise or anything like that. It's just that, hey, I'm living in a region where us people might get exiled, Israel. And and I don't know where I would, it's kind of like, it's not like I have too much sovereignty. I'm not able to buy a flight ticket and sustain myself. So basically, like, one never knows when we're there. Um, and a lot of people on these expeditions were kind of like, either they were prisoners or they were, uh, you know, uh, or they were young workers that was the way to promise the life insurance of the spousey. Okay, if you talk about Vogue, then the women had life insurance because it was 45 chance of return from the expeditions, and so the foundation of Dutch East India, and it's like, it's kind of like, these people were trying to somehow promise the lives of the people at home, knowing that they have less than 50% to return alive. And the Dutch colonialism is actually known to be one of the most cruel ones. So definitely the things that happened, probably with the colonial and stuff, were juxtaposed to indigenous lands. Um, and this is a time where the violation of sexual sovereignty, which is the core violation of sovereignty, is actually good reason enough to invade the country and get away with that. Okay? Israel tried to play on that, but what is now being exposed is the way that Israel was funded by human traffickers that did a pact with Hitler and trafficked people to Argentina as well, where the Nazis were, and a lot of the foundations of the state of Israel, and it's something that's still running. Um, and this is something that kind of like, hey, Israel had a thing where it's like there were actually, those that don't believe that there was like ritual raping 7th of October of Israelis, there was. So and there was also the witchcraft and other technologies effect of that, and one of the people were affected by the second frontier, and it was a there were big attempts to make me of the first frontier. I'm not supposed I basically was not supposed to broadcast here to be alive, so that was absolutely real, but so was the trafficking ring within Israel. In fact, they cooperate. Okay, that's pretty much how it works. These are extortion cults, um, and so it's kind of like, yep, Israel got to uh, um, do whatever it wanted to do in entire Palestine. But now all the trafficking cults are being exposed within Israel, including the parliament members. That parliament members structurally were involved in ritual abuse in Israel of Israelis. So it's kind of like, well, if it's not the image of Neptune's not in Libra anymore. We're not in Gladio anymore, and it's not the image of justice. It actually has to be real, and this is where, if they play on the card of creating a myth of rape and then conquering, which was not a myth, it was genuine, then it's going to expose also the other places that do ritual abuse, um, and that is and is exactly what's happening in the world at large. So, and that was my argument with the knitting cult lady, which was that to do the simple thing of disobeying illegal order that nobody has to, like, it's kind of like she disobeyed the illegal order to look up information, but it's not like the commanders were not continuing on with doing certain things. And for her, it's kind of like, well, she kept working there, and she wrote a book about, criticizing the cults of the Armenian U.S. and so on. Um, but hey, way like if it's about sexual sovereignty violation, that's way worse than invading Canada. In fact, there are some Inuits that would love to have their women stop murdering Inuit women. I mean, that could be great. It's an enterprise. If somebody stops the rape of Inuit women, they can conquer the Canada. I mean, they just have to grant sovereignty to the Inuit and their land. That's just my episode on astrological considerations for declarations of independence. I did that with Greenland on NASA's chart. And then, of course, I got pissed. There was this discussion with Denmark. It was a Model UN moment, but in NATO. So, do I predict sovereignty of Greenland and other Inuit territories? It might happen. Like, and here's the thing: because it's such a juncture for the world, any power there needs to be regulated. And so, with honoring sexual sovereignty, there would actually be a more decentralized form of power relations that I don't know to predict now. But if I think about what would be the solution, then it's some sort of both sovereignty of the people in the land, because you have to think about whether it's the Sami people or the Inuit people. I don't know about Greenlanders, but there are a lot of these people are simply, you know, other than the fact that that was their indigenous land, there were also people that were no longer being able to be in other lands because of the wars of the many tribes that got there. For example, if you take it northern Norway, the Sami people are mainly connected with the north, although kind of like the Vikings came and and if we talk about the land of origin, that is quite an argument. And in colonialization o'clock, people are going to have that argument in arms, and this is where honoring the sexual sovereignty is way more important, and disobeying illegal orders to violate sexual sovereignty are way more important for the sovereignty of the people, okay, of the people for whom the army is supposed to protect, or even expand on, or then disobeying the illegal order, let's say, to check information on how to invade Canada. Okay, so I just gave a scenario where honoring, stopping the femicide of Inuit women. What could, if somebody takes over Canada, stops the femicide of Inuit women, stops any harm to the animals, brings food prices for the Inuit to a real, and gives Inuit people sovereignty over their land with the normal decentralized, checks and balances to make sure that there wouldn't be like, a kingdom that overthrows the entire world, then they can conquer Canada today. But If somebody invades Canada, rapes everybody, rapes everybody, rapes everybody, is a little bit tired by the time they get to Inuit, they don't get Canada. Hmm. The Inuit might get Canada if they're not rapey, and that is that's just colonialism o'clock. Now those are things about why do we talk about the military? I didn't. Because Trump and NATO, Trump in NATO, Trump in NATO. You know, he probably has the intelligence to back it up or not. Like I don't know. There goes your 5%. Now, let's take a look at the chart of the Great Depression because all wars are currency wars. And, so the chart of the Great Depression, what's happening? What happened? Oh, the ascendant is applying to Chiron. Chart of the Great Depression. Venus was in its home sign in Libra. I know you would be very excited to know that. Uranus ingressed into Aries. Think about the Uranus ingress into Aries at the 2010. And they began to kill the moose, but also with ticks, mind you. And actually, they did that to our dog. We had a dog, a Newfoundland dog, and suddenly we would go outside of the home, and then he would have many ticks. He also had a blood issue, and then we had to remove the ticks. It was something really, really weird because we never had such a problem, and they were, I guess, causing that. Newfoundland is also a herd animal, I think. So only now I understand, or probably socially engineered in some way. They tried to assassinate our dog. Like I really don't know. And now they're killing the dogs again. Um, but that was beyond terrible. It's not what he died from, but that was kind of like very, very weird. And it was not like we weren't even going with him in a place where we could get there. Like something very weird. Um, and now I think about it, Uranus in 2010, there was also coincided with what would later bloom to be the Arab Spring. It was pretty much the aftermath of the subprime. And that was, with the Great Depression, we have Uranus 8 degrees Aries. So it's not the ingress, probably more the Uranus Aries. And if I think about the Mitu, it was the Uranus Aries conjunction. Now, the Great Depression, 29, it was in between wars, and that was the time of the suffragist movement. Now, suffragists do not come only in one origin, race, or bloodline, and that can definitely move. Okay, they can definitely make bankers want to move things around, where eventually they would have to coincide with the fact that all those that didn't support suffragists died with the suffragists in the First and Second World War. Okay, let alone the fact that black people were beginning to rehabilitate themselves economically again because everybody could trade. I just saw a short, it was a post about, oh, you can trade with only $20, the price of a meal. You can begin to trade with that, and you'll thank me in 6 months. And it's kind of like, well, I was thinking about how trade can be like gambling, and people that don't actually know what is it that they're trading, or what are the companies, or what are they getting into when they trade, um, because those that move the markets do certain rituals, okay, and they move the things in a certain way. And with Uranus Aries conjunction, we had the Me Too, and one of the images that came to me was the girl in front of the Raging Bull in the trade centers, and um, and I didn't understand why, but that was definitely a lot of the fiscal moves that were preparing the ground for COVID and preparing the ground for the crisis in Ukraine, for the crisis in Israel Palestine, um, Maui, and the a pandemic of natural disasters, and many other things that we see today. And that was the time where people were actually tapping into their sexual sovereignty. Now we understand that what undermined sexual sovereignty was done to basically consolidate natural resources and real estate in a way that grants no soul, okay, to those that supposedly win over the land. In that way, um, and the beliefs, the religious beliefs behind those that move the market, are kind of Nazi. Women's subjugation, belief in slavery, um, you know, that beg the question: is it what the people want? And if people are looking at like the Bolshevik Revolution, funded by the oil companies, so there's definitely something way bigger, because we wouldn't be talking about it now if there wouldn't be something that's about to change regarding that now. Now, the moon was opposing Uranus at the day of the collapse, okay, October 29, 1929. Sun and Mars in Scorpio in their home sign. Mars trining Pluto in Cancer. Rahu Chiron with the ascendant upon the crash, so that would be a wound around something bullish, a wound around something being bullish, with Venus in the sign of trade, which is Libra. Ketu would be in between the Sun and Mars. So we were purging something of a Martian nature. Um, Saturn was on the galactic center. Okay, so something that trade event that affects the world, and it was trining, still applying to trine Neptune, which means something will affect global trade. Neptune in Virgo, but definitely, do I have the thing that drops the thingy? No, I don't. There are a lot of things here that could be a lot of things, um, but do I have the thing that drops the thingy? Nope. Each and every one of these events could be a main event. I definitely think that Aries here plays a bigger role than we think. Um, and here's the thing: Sedna would ingress into Taurus around the end of the 60s. I don't know where Sedna was in 1929, and I would need to look at that because something here could be an Aries Sedna, okay? And that I think I would need to look at it in a future episode because there's something that looks to me like an Aries Sedna. Um, let's see if we get an Aries Sedna conjunction. Aries, Chiron, and Uranus and Sedna conjunction. Well, this is right now. This is the time where we look at those things. Sedna Uranus will definitely do a lot of things. Illnesses that change our lives. Okay, this is interesting. Um, I definitely need to do a study with me live on that. But I want to see if I can have a Sedna Uranus, a Sedna Aries. I don't know if I have Sedna Aries um, on the aspects and transits, but aspect search engine. I don't think I will have Sedna. Nope. Okay. Another way is to catch something in 1929 and roll with that election. So let's do. Okay, we'll bring that one. October 29. Yeah, my episodes are always going to be on the spot. Um, because it's kind of like quantum learning because with quantum the observation point matters, and I always take a look at why am I asking this question right now, and I allow it to evolve. So this is natural to my broadcasting nature, so to speak. Some people can't stand it, some people love it, and that's just the way it's gonna be. We'll do New York. We are talking about trade. And let's take a look at Sedna. Asteroids. That's what I love about this, that I can just pick Sedna and Aries. It's in the malefic asteroids. This is Sedna. Let's take a look at Lucifer as well, if we are already here. And okay. Aries, 1 degree Aries, retrograde. So Aries was applying to her ingress point. Sedna was 16 degrees Aries back then, so it was not an Aries Sedna meeting. And Uranus was far enough from Aries. There's definitely Aries going back to a certain point. And Saturn on the galactic center, Jupiter in Gemini, big market crash. But of course I can delineate in the aftermath, but Ketu Mars, you see, because each and every one of those we've had a century, okay? None of that was the Great Depression. This is why I said it's probably Aries, and it's not an Aries Sedna. When will Aries and Sedna meet, or when have they met? I don't know. Okay, that's definitely a topic for research, for people that do outer planet research. Um, they will be sextile in about 40 years. Okay, around about. It's very slow moving planets. But this was definitely to do with Aries doing the back and forth in 1 degree Aries. But to me, it's like Aries is applying to go back to the 0 degrees. Okay. Now Saturn Neptune is going to be on that point, and that's why I got to look at the Great Depression, because Saturn Neptune is going to be meeting in 0 and then 1 degree Aries, and this is the point where Aries ingressed to these points. We had the Great Depression. So, will we have the Great Depression with Saturn Neptune? I don't necessarily think, if we will have something like that, it would be when Uranus reingresses into Gemini. Okay, because then Uranus meets Sedna. It happens once in 84 years. When is it? Okay, so that would be 2026. Let's take a look at 84 years back. It would be the Second World War. The end of the second. Wait, it would be. Wait a second. Uranus last met Sedna in Taurus, and that would be around probably around the Great Depression, Second World War. Um, because that would be the 7 years of Uranus in Taurus, and Sedna's been there. No, it would be in Aries. Sedna was in Aries. Sedna was in Aries until the late 60s. I know it's confusing, bear with me. Sedna was in Aries until the late 60s, which would mean that the previous encounter would be, okay, if we had Uranus at the 1940s in Taurus, that would mean that the, yeah, in 1929 Uranus was here. So this would only be 1 year. It would be that meeting. See how we came about in a roundabout way to the same point of this chart. So it would probably be the 30s. Okay, around the, because Uranus would do the back and forth and Sedna. For example, 2023, Uranus was meeting Sedna from Taurus and then ingressed into Gemini, and that was the Sedna ingress into Gemini, which was the Palestinian raid and then occupation of Palestine, a genocide, but it basically is something that's still ongoing, and probably Uranus ingressing into Gemini for good is going to be a major important event regarding that, which is going to have a global importance. Even by now, they already persecute the like Israeli everything. um, okay. But that is still the superficial level because they don't do anything about the sexual sovereignty. They're like genocide, genocide, genocide. Well, sexual sovereignty. Let's talk about the stuff that made that possible, and that's violation of sexual sovereignty in children and adults, and trafficking of children and adults, and so on. And then the money launder on that. Um, so Saturn, Neptune meeting in that Aries point will definitely be um, okay. Uranus Sedna was definitely the Nuremberg rules, where they wrote the no entrance to Jews and dogs type of thing, and okay, with the businesses, they began to close businesses. Okay, it was the sign of trade Mars, real estate. Okay, it was it was preparing for what would later be the building of the ghettos. And yes, Uranus is meeting Sedna again. Now we're talking about digital 15-minute cities. Okay, why digital is meeting in Gemini, and Gemini is technology. And it would be meeting with Saturn of Uranus at the end of Gemini, which would be 2030. So now with Uranus, with Aries, it's basically Saturn Neptune is going to be on that Aries point, but it's not going to be meeting Aries. Because right now it's more like the Uranus, Sedna, Chiron, Aries at the end of Aries, which is about the Rahu of NATO. Um, and this is curation for the Gladio times. What curation? I don't know, because there's tremendous wounding to do with that. Re-including something. I know that NATO now contains a lot of Slav people after the fall of the Yugoslavia, and a lot of them are sovereign NATO countries. So this is definitely a closing of a cycle where in Gladio there was only the beginning of. Now we see these are sovereign countries until the 5%, of course, but they are defined as countries. So everybody has to pay protection, and so um, so this is where. But here's the thing: Black Moon Lilith is about sexual sovereignty, and Rahu with NATO is conjoining Black Moon Lilith, which is the heck is that? Oh, okay. Nothing. I was doing a solve yesterday, and I made my first lip balm, and then I just dipped. It's personal use. So I just dipped the lip balm. I just dipped it in and waited for it to dry, and I was like, oh, there is still balm on the outer side. Um, yes, not for commercial use, but that was how my yesterday went. Um, is it going to be like the Great Depression? No, it's global, and it's definitely something to do with the tariffs. Definitely something that will have another chapter when Uranus ingresses to meet Sedna in Gemini, and definitely the big issue with um, okay, because definitely the Great Depression is, yes, we call it the Great Depression. Saturn in Sagittarius, Sagittarius ruled by Jupiter, great Saturn depression to do with trade. Um, so restricting, and on Mula Nakshatra, restricting global wealth. Okay, and then Jupiter was in Gemini, so that's big trade event, and then Mercury in toxic degree Libra, something evil to do with women, actually. Venus 11 degree Libra. So that was, yes, there are all these things evil to do with women there. So it's not something like a big surprise or anything like that. But if I would be expecting to see like a Jupiter, Mars, Saturn thingy, like a break, a crash of trade and stocks and business and banks, no, it moves more to the Venus, more to the jurisdiction, relation between trade women, or causing women to commit suicide. Um, Again, I don't know what happened there, and what were the hidden things that were happening. Um, but that definitely was an issue. Okay, it looks like poisoning of the justice system of women, and then the crash. Like, I don't know. Okay, definitely something that was engineered and manufactured by election, and this is why I see it more by the Aries that represents the cloning lineages, that represents, I know people talk about it, oh, it's the LGBT, it's the cloning, okay? When we understand that, we understand what's Aries doing with Chiron at the end of Aries. Um, you know, and this is to do with the elite. So basically, it was a big elite move that was engineered and manufactured. Okay. Yes, Mars is with Ketu. But definitely Mars crossing Ketu would be Mars in 12 degrees, which would have been a couple of days earlier. So that definitely looked like something that happened by an election. Very, very engineered. Okay, if I try to take a look, what's the fated event that happened? Nothing. Even Aries is kind of like is approaching 0 degree Aries. Is not. She would be there again. It is not. Those that think that the economy is kind of like a natural event, we definitely found a hidden hand here, okay? It's engineered. There's nothing. Chiron is meeting Rahu. That's the thing about it. But then it's ruled by Venus in her home sign in 11 degrees. So it's kind of like suicidal women over something that is a wound around being bullish. But that is maybe Chiron Rahu, but Chiron Rahu, we had an eclipse with Chiron Rahu, I think around the October, the 7th of October. I'm not sure if it was okay. And we were like, oh, Palestinians are being liberated, they're escaping together, and it's like Muslim Brotherhood of Satan. We still see Mommy Taliban's in Gaza. It's the same structure of trafficking, extortion cults, and oil. So it doesn't matter what language he speaks, it has to honor sexual sovereignty or dead bodies upon dead bodies. And people being also stealth hunted. Um, there is also this issue in, I think, Bosnia around hunting, human hunting in Bosnia. Um, Again, it's not new events. It's just that in war, it looks like it's something that happens at war. And this is basically kind of like trying to include certain people into the old money or the old nobilities with those rituals. And then those rituals are like more public. Also a big time for extortion cults. Okay? Chiron Rahu. But other than that, It's not even like, oh, there's so many companies coming together. No, they're not. Yes, Saturn, of course, Saturn is on the galactic center every 28 years. We don't have the Great Depression every 28 years. Um, it's not even trining Neptune on the degree or anything. Um, Chiron Rahu we have every 50 years or so. Okay, so definitely Chiron Rahu, but again, every 50 years or so. Okay, for example, 7th of October is exactly on the day 50 years to the 1973 war. On the date, okay? That's a Chiron thing. Like Israel has to change a natal chart, by the way. Israel, astrologically speaking, Israel has to have a new declaration of independence. Otherwise, it's kind of like, well, 50 years from now, it's Nachbar clock. So, and Palestine has to get Chiron a little bit away from the genocide degree, which is, astrologically thinking about that. I'm thinking with you as I speak, because it's like, hey, do they really want that to be in the Declaration of Independence? Because 50 years, it means what? Another genocide? Like, people have to think about it when they do. And here is the thing, usually declarations of independence come at the win of a war. But the Chiron issue is that 50 years later, and this is something that tells us that something about declarations of independence, okay, we have to think about something when it comes to declarations of independence. Otherwise, we just set the Declaration of Independence and we just, talismaned a timestamp where 50 years from, we're going to have another event of that sort. I don't know how to resolve that, but I'm raising that as open consideration for declarations of independence. Big, big, big honoring of Crasia Tassio that looked at things sidereally and really confirmed what I saw tropically, that the moon in declarations of independence and natal charts is almost always looking very nasty, and the moon is the people. For Hamas chart, by the way, moon is in Capricorn, which may explain why it took 75 years, because Fatah was not much different. Moon in Capricorn, moon in Saturn sign. People taking time, taking a lot of delay in meeting their safety, homeland, motherland, moon needs. Okay, so that is by design. I don't think that the people that elected the Declaration of Independence, whether by Fatah or Hamas, were not fully aware of that. But I have to tell you something. I had a colleague astrologer who was divorced from a lady, and he was seeing Hamas chart, and he's saying, "Oh, my ex had this chart, and he was actually talking favorably. She was really fighting about what was important." Saturn was 22 degrees Sagittarius for Hamas chart. I particularly remember that because I said, "Oh my God, I really hope that's not what you were married to." Okay, in any election, whether it's astrological election, talismanic election, definitely declaration of independence election, the position of the moon matters. So, and I talked about it previously. even for those that wanted to put the people and the land in a compromised position, they basically picked an election with a bad moon.